in Ukraine, where Joseph Lindsley is. Joseph, I'd like to start off by sharing some feedback from listeners after your talk with us yesterday. And as you said, you were a little frustrated, and we certainly heard from a lot of people about that. Let me just read a couple of these and then let you respond. Please let Joseph know that although progress has been made, I have concerns about judicial reform, governance, and corruption in Ukraine that will need to be addressed when the war ends. In fact, the UK is currently holding recovery conferences to provide funds to rebuild Ukraine after the war while working to keep corruption from returning. Love Bob in the morning show, but Bob, please choose your words carefully. Joseph's comments were not what he thinks or his take, as you said. He is reporting the facts and dates with names and a timeline. When you use thinks or his take, you make it sound like his opinion. Joseph is a reporter first and foremost and a very important voice in this fight for democracy in Ukraine. Keep up your important work in this newsworthy story. Bob, the ending to Joe's reporting on Thursday seemed abrupt. I hope it wasn't related to the subject matter, and I didn't hear you say until tomorrow. Sorry, hate to be mean, but people are losing interest in this story. It may go on forever, like Israel and Palestine. And finally, there was this. Joseph Lindsley's reports are so informative, they should be shared nationwide. So people are paying close attention, Joseph.
Well, Bob, good afternoon from a rainy day in Kharkiv. And there was some strange audio at the end. I could not hear you, but I'm still here.
That was yesterday, right? Yeah.
Yes, that was yesterday. So nothing sinister there. And it's great to hear this, the feedback from the audience. Speaking of that recovery fund conference in the UK, a lot of people see a lot of opportunities here in a good way to develop and invest in Ukraine. But as Boris Johnson said during that conference several weeks ago, he said the main thing is to first stop this immediate, clear and present danger, the daily threat against Ukraine. But even as Ukrainians are fighting, the Russian invaders, I know many people who are working on the ongoing project of reforming corruption that's been going on since the 2014 Revolution of Dignity. And Ukraine is this incredibly vigilant civil society. And I think sometimes we hear more about corruption here. I mean, even in the wartime, many Ukrainians are posting on Facebook whenever they suspect corruption. And so I think we hear about it more because Ukrainians are not shy about talking about the various, problems in the politics and in the society. But I think as we look around the world, there's corruption everywhere. And I think, people call Ukraine the most corrupt country in Europe, but I think you got to first say Russia is number one at that. But I think we just have to try to put these things in perspective. It is it's been a long battle to sort of change Ukraine's reputation on that score. And in fact, on everything the guy was talking about yesterday in that timeline, a few hours later, Charlie Kirk, who's a close ally of President Trump. I've met Charlie a few times. He runs that organization called Turning Point USA, and he published on Twitter a timeline similar to the timeline I shared with you yesterday, but missing all of the connections that show that Burisma and Hunter Biden have actually been working with pro-Russians and friends of Putin. All of those were conveniently excluded. And in this tweet that was retweeted 10,000 times, it was seen by more than 600,000 people so far. Charlie Kirk makes the case, the only reason America is helping Ukraine with this massive amount of support is because Joe Biden's son made some money here. And so we do see this huge information burden of false information where people in a very easily can make it sound like they know what they're talking about and castigate all of the great work that Ukrainians continue to do to clean up corruption, which I think in many ways, I have some friends who work at the Council of Europe, and they've been working for several years now on reforming local government in Ukraine. And it used to be only the central government controlled all the spending, sort of a vestige of Soviet times. And now they've reduced it. Now I think it's, I don't want to misquote the numbers, but now most of the government spending is at the local or regional level. And so these have been amazing reforms. And there's a Danish representative who runs the Council of Europe's office in Kyiv. And he says, actually, Europeans can learn a lot about democracy from Ukrainians, from the not from the institutional level, but from the level of the people who participate and who are vigilant. And, I'm reminded of that here in this city of Kharkiv, which in 2014 and once again in 2022, the Russians were at the edge. They were busing people into the city. They were a few blocks from where I am right now. They had taken over the public administrative building on the main square, and it was the citizens that pushed them out. And so that really is the essence of Ukrainian democracy, not necessarily great institutions, but citizens who work together and stay vigilant against tyranny, whether it's domestic or, in this case, the invading Russians.
And that comment, and you hear this a lot, people are losing interest in the story. And this is the danger, isn't it, as the war drags on? And Putin may be counting on this to help him in the long run, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he thought he could swiftly take Ukraine, and that didn't, obviously has not worked. And so a long, slow, killing of Ukraine is not a bad option for him. And the counteroffensive is extremely difficult, and we don't even have much news to report on it. There are a lot of funerals. I think that the Russian bombing of the Novokakhovka Dam, that I suspect that did a lot to harm Ukraine's counteroffensive. And so that's why, in all times past, tyrants and dictators could get away with this because there was not easy access to information. And that's what's unique right now. And, there was, I mentioned a few times this reporter that she'd stayed here for a while in Kharkiv, and she was trying to give people extra money or just to help them in different ways. And my friend Mikita, who owns a restaurant here, he said, no, you don't have to give us anything. He says, it's enough for this. Thank you for the freedom feelings, the freedom feelings. He says, that's the most important. And that idea was echoed by the foreign minister of Finland, Elina Valtonen. She was responding to this idea that was talked about a little bit at the NATO conference this week, that Ukraine needs to be more grateful. And she says, no, that's not true. She said the West must understand that this is not charity, as Ukraine is fighting for us, for our liberty, and for Europe's security architecture.
Ukraine downed, 23 drones overnight into Friday, so the war rages on. And Joseph, hopefully the weekend will be calm for you, and I'm glad that there is a little less frustration in your voice today than there was yesterday.
Well, yeah, I got it out of my system, but it's as we see with that tweet, it's an ongoing thing to correct. And I'll just say we've had so many error alarms. I mean, some of them are only 2 minutes, but the attacks have not been as vociferous lately, and so there is a sense of what's cooking right now. But the last thing I'll say is it's no one really talked about this at that NATO conference, but Russia is weakened. We got to remember that attempted coup or whatever it was, and if people really want to put a stop to this. Before Russia has time to get strength, now is the time to band together. But this seems like many people are starting to lose their will outside of Ukraine.
We will talk to you Monday, my friend. Thank you, as always.
Until Monday, Bob. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important, that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Що він сказав?
Well, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?